Friends, we'd like to begin devotions, please.
O divine providence, this assemblage is composed of thy friends who are attracted to thy beauty and are set ablaze by the fire of thy love. Turn these souls into heavenly angels. Resuscitate them through the breath of the Holy Spirit. Grant them eloquent tongues and resolute hearts. Bestow upon them heavenly power and merciful susceptibilities. Cause them to become the promulgators of the oneness of mankind, and the cause of love and concord in the world of humanity, so that the perilous darkness of ignorant prejudice may vanish through the light of the sun of truth. This dreary world may become illumined. This material realm may be absorbed by the rays of the word of spirit. These different colors may be merged into one color, and the melody of praise may rise to the kingdom of thy sanctity. Verily, thou art the omnipotent and the almighty.
In these 9 blessed states, Abdu'l-Baha journeyed and traveled from place to place, explained the wisdom of the heavenly books, and diffused the fragrances. In most of these states, he founded the divine evidence and opened the door of teaching. In those states, he sowed pure seeds and planted blessed trees. Now the believers of God and the maidservants of the merciful must irrigate these fields, and with the utmost power engage themselves in the cultivation of these heavenly plantations, so that the seeds may grow and develop, prosperity and blessing be realized, and many rich and great harvests be gathered in. The kingdom of God is like unto a farmer who comes into possession of a piece of pure and virgin soil. Heavenly seeds are scattered therein. The clouds of divine providence pour down, and the rays of the sun of reality shine forth. Now all these bounties exist and appear in full in these 9 states. The divine gardener passed by that holy ground and scattered pure seeds from the lordly teachings in that field. The rain of the bounties of God poured down, and the heat of the sun of reality, that is, the merciful confirmations, shone with the utmost splendor. It is my hope that each one of those blessed souls may become a peerless and unique irrigator, and the earth and the east and the west of America may become like unto a delectable paradise, so that all of you may hear from the supreme concourse the cry of, "Blessed are you," and again, "Blessed are you." Upon you be greeting and praise.
O thy kind Lord, praise be unto thee that thou hast shown us the highway of guidance. Open the doors of the kingdom and manifest thyself to the Son of reality. To the blind thou hast given sight, to the deaf thou hast granted hearing. Thou hast supplicated the dead, thou hast rebuked the poor, thou hast shown the way to those that go astray. Thou hast led those whose hearts to the paths of guidance. Thou hast suffered the thirsty fish
behold the face, and hear the voice of the promised one. Great indeed is this day, great indeed is this day, great indeed is this day. The call of God has
Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the City of New York, the City of the Covenant, the site of the World Congress to be held at Javits Center in November of 1992. I'd like to welcome you to beautiful downtown Fairfield, New Jersey. And after the lights of last night, we had a strong crowd here who were rocking and rolling after Swan. And there were plenty of non-Baha'is here who were listening very attentively to Mrs. Conrad's talk. And the firesides that were going on and the promenade outside this room last night. I have a feeling that Fairfield, New Jersey is not just going to be lovely downtown New Jersey very much longer. I think after we leave tomorrow, it really won't know what hit it. And let's make sure it doesn't know what hit it. I'd just like to go over briefly what's going to be happening this morning. At this time, we'd like to ask all the children to gather outside. That's children ages 4 through 16. Please gather outside. Our teachers will meet you there, and we'll go up to the Willowbrook room. Let's try to do this as quickly and quietly as possible. From a member of the National Spiritual Assembly. Then we have an introduction to the teaching fair. We have a brief teaching report from some local Baha'is. Then we will adjourn mostly to interact in the hallway. You are free to look at the exhibits in the teaching fair, the Vision to Victory Teaching Activities Fair, and to sort of share successful teaching stories with each other, sort of exchange ideas of what has worked for you, what may not be as successful in one area, may be very successful in your area. This is your time to exchange information. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. James Nelson, who was formerly for 9 years the chairman of the National Spiritual Assembly. He is now currently serving as the vice chairman and the assistant secretary. He is a former Los Angeles municipal court judge, past presiding judge over the court system, handling the largest volume of cases in this country. He has been appointed by the Supreme Court of California to the Judicial Performance Commission, which recommends the removal and discipline of all judges in California. At the request of the National Spiritual Assembly, he is now working full-time for the faith. I have just learned that he is a pilot and that he is a formidable racket player. Let's please welcome Mr. James.
That's not the way to get behind time. My dear Baha'i family, Allahu Akbar. It is my joy to welcome you to this Vision to Victory conference, and I welcome you as the voice of experience, because this is the 10th of these conferences held out of the 12 that will be held. The 11th is being held simultaneously in Pasadena, California, this day.
which leads me to answer the second most often question asked of me. First most often is, how did you become a Baha'i? The second is, where's Dorothy? Dorothy is doing this very same thing in Pasadena at this time for those 2,000 or so that are gathered at that time. So we'll be within the next couple of hours. I want to commend you, first of all, on the logo that you have devised for the little badges, because it does something that I think is significant, and that is it puts vision and victory very close together. Because in it you will see vision and victory nested. This is a very special conference too. Not just because it's held here and near the city of the Covenant, because it will be blessed with some very special appearances. In the course of the next 2 days, you will be in the presence of Councilors Roberts, Harris, Director General Ellis, Janet and Peter Kahn will drop in upon us, and House of Justice member Peter Kahn may be induced to say a word or two for you. We will have our General Secretary, Robert Henderson. Mrs. Conrad, you've already heard from. And now I would like to invite your special attention to the presence and gift of Mrs. Laura Kaplan, because this is indeed Laura's son. He was, as you know, to have been here. He is here. He initiated the Vision for Victory conferences at the one that was held in Boston, the very first one. And the spirit which was engendered there has captured the continent. And in every place, his memory and his name are invoked to our aid. I would like to recall that momentarily the nature of vision. Vision is characteristically something that gets better as you come closer to your object. And vision to the Baha'i community is age-old. That is to say, 2 generations ago, Abdu'l-Baha gave us the tablets of the divine plan, a vision. And from that vantage point of remoteness, we could stand back and see the vast panorama that lay before us as possibilities. But friends, for 2 generations, we've been standing back watching the panorama. And I wonder how many times God will create that window of opportunity through which we must go in order to achieve victory in that vision. You see, this is almost like launching a space vehicle. There is a window in time through which we must go through. And if we don't, we will be postponed. And postponement in this world now portends disaster. This is why the House of Justice time and time again has called us to approach closer to that fire which will set us all ablaze. You see, in the tablets of the divine plan, we see vaguely on the horizon smoke of the great conflagration. And only as we approach it, through the messages of Shoghi Effendi and the calls of the House of Justice, do we begin to feel the warmth of that fire that we are approaching. But we will not have achieved success until we are ablaze with the very embers of that same fire. And until we make not only Fairfield, New Jersey and New York City a different place, but we ourselves become different people. Carriers of the flame of Baha'u'llah that is only ours to carry. In order to capture a little bit of the vision that we seek to translate into victory, beginning with these conferences, let me take you back, way back to the old world. Now, I'm not talking about going back to 1066 or even to 1844. What I'm talking about is going all the way back to March of 1987. This is the beginning of the opening of the window of time. Because at that time, the House of Justice told us that the time was ready for that final push, the establishment of those structures on the Ark on Mount Carmel, which would synchronize, in the words of Shoghi Effendi, with two other momentous events: the maturation of Baha'i institutions and the arrival of the lesser peace. Friends, the push that we give this day is inextricably combined with the arrival of the lesser peace. Because if we in this hall do not go forth as different human beings, recognizing the challenge of this hour, we may deprive the world of its spiritual inheritance. Not just us, but everybody. So beginning in March of 1987, the vision became closer and the warmth became more as we approached this conflagration. And then in April of 1988, following the release of the statement by the House of Justice in August of 1977, that we were going forward with the building of these structures, the National Assemblies of the Baha'is in this continent got together and tried to put forth in cogent terms the vision as it was seen. That the completion of this momentous task assigned us by the House of Justice was indeed an essential prerequisite to the arrival of the lesser peace, and ultimately to bring about that Christ-promised kingdom of God on earth. That's the business that we are about. When at last Razvan, your National Spiritual Assembly, arrived on the shores of the Holy Land for the International Convention, we were aware of the vision. We knew in our hearts that we had to be up and going and about it. And we were beset from every side by members of other national spiritual assemblies who would come to us and say, when is America going to get on the move? When are you going to show us the way? When will you arise to this victory? And we called ourselves together and we prayed at the shrine. And we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. And we were taken into the presence of the Universal House of Justice. And we consulted with that body for many hours. And they assigned us to a room in the seat of the Universal House of Justice for our consultation, and we sat there. And we took a great drawing board on the wall, and we began to put flesh on the bones of this vision. And these conferences are the results of that consultation. This place was a name written on that board, in that room, in the seat of the Universal House of Justice. These people are those who came to mind as we consulted in that holy spot. Now, let me conclude by asking you to indulge me a whim. I'm old enough now to be indulged. I'm going to ask you in one moment to say the first name that you were given, out loud, in front of everybody. Just to say your name. When I say so. Okay, now, everybody, say your name. John. Now, I assure you, at the end of this conference, you're going to forget that name. Because that name cannot do the work that we have to do. Baha'u'llah has given us new names. And those names can do the work. You see, See, Baha'u'llah does not call you by your given name. He calls us the stars of the heaven of understanding. He calls us the breeze that stirs at the break of day. He calls us the soft, flowing waters upon which must depend the very life of all men. Now, Jim can't do that work, but a star can do that work. A star is the essence of fire. The soft breeze can do that work because the breeze refreshes. And certainly the soft, flowing, living waters that we are can do that work. That's our challenge. Stay with us. Work with us. Be victorious together. Allah.
The auxiliary board member for proclamation.
Especially wonderful, but at the same time very difficult task to introduce someone that I have worked so closely, I have loved so dearly. And all I can say about Dr. William Roberts, who by profession is a psychologist, is he is a true brother and a loving friend. I have seen and watched him in the last, I would say, 6-7 years. First as an auxiliary board member, then as a continental board of counselors. And I'm always pleased that my spirit is always uplifted whenever I come to talk to you. And we have the pleasure of being here with Dr. William Roberts.
Do you feel excited? Yes. Oh, good. I'd like to begin by first calling our attention to those special guests that Jim Nelson mentioned earlier, but I'd like to have them stand. First, let me ask the representatives of the National Spiritual Assembly, the Secretary General, Dr. Robert Henderson. Would you please stand, please? Vice Chair and now Assistant Secretary of the National Assembly, Jim Nelson. And Joanna Conrad, also Assistant Secretary of the National Assembly. arrived yet. We will also have the privilege of Counselor Robert Harris. Has he arrived yet? Robert. He's Counselor Harris. And at some point, we'll also have the benefit of a visit from Dr. Peter Kahn and Dr. Janet Kahn. I don't know if they've arrived yet. Have they arrived? No. Please, let's have them come forward. Now, you've also heard that we have another very special guest, and I think I'd just like to add my word of acknowledgement. She really is a jewel, I think, formed in the East, and then taken to the Holy Land and buffed and shined so that she's scintillated. And now she shines resplendent here in the West. I think all of us should give a wonderful greeting to Mrs. Flora Kaplan. Welcome to each one of you. Friends, our task this morning is to... Oh, Counselor Ellis has arrived. Friends, our task this morning is to focus on teaching. And I thought I would just share a passage from a letter written on behalf of the Guardian to the Baha'i community of Tacoma, just to focus our attention a little bit. And because my voice is not very strong and may crack, I've asked the auxiliary board member, Tahire Adi, if she will help with this presentation. She has some things to share with you. The greatest honor and glory which can come to an individual is to bring the light of guidance to some new souls. The quickening power of the Holy Spirit, which has come into the world through Baha'u'llah, is the source of immortal life. And those who are quickened by this Spirit in this world will find themselves in great honor and glory in the next world. The most meritorious service which anyone could render is to bring the light of divine guidance and the quickening power of the Spirit to an entirely new area. Humanity is crying for salvation. And it is only by the Baha'is going into the various areas that it can be brought to them. Friends, the challenge and the task for us this weekend is to focus our attention on the achievement of that which the House of Justice called for in its Rizwan message, and that is entry by troops. Entry by troops. Large-scale enrollment. And yes, New York, and in New Jersey, and in Connecticut, where we live, in our backyards. And the House of Justice assures us that the time is now. It's appropriate. It's not a strange notion. It's not just probable, it's not just possible, it's probable. It's time for us to move into that arena. So the National Spiritual Assembly has convened these conferences to give us an opportunity to be together, to focus our attention, and to begin to strip away all the worrisome cares that prevent us from moving in that direction. This morning, we will have an opportunity to go to the teaching fair and to discuss different possibilities that have happened in a number of different communities, so that we can really have some sort of simplistic, basic conversation about how do you do this and that. That will begin the process. And then, of course, we'll hear the rousing vision from the National Assembly. And we'll be inspired by these wonderful speakers that are before us. And then have a chance to really consult with one another and commit to one another exactly how we will move from where we have been to where we want to be. And that is as in the forefront of the teaching work in the world. Friends, let's not forget that this gathering is for teaching. That's our purpose in being here. It'll be wonderful to see each other, to spend time together. Of course, we'll be in love with one another. But our discussions, our conversation, our interactions must be on the achievement of this victory. Large-scale enrollment here in this great metropolitan area of New York. Tyler?
Months of excitement since the convention, when the delegates from International Convention came and gave to the delegates and the friends the news of that wonderful, wonderful decision to have these 12 conferences and force that to be chosen as a teaching site. There has been an amazing excitement that I can feel everywhere I travel. And I'm glad this is one of those Vision to Victory conferences. And you should all be up here and see the beauty of your faces in this room. It is about time for us to also appreciate those who so steadfastly and tirelessly labor to bring about such gatherings. As a fruit of wanting to be grateful and thankful, I thought I should myself take a personal step. And with the aid of my dear friend, Kathy Penn, we have made a beautiful card, which I think is beautiful. And I'd like to share that with you. It says to our dearly loved National Spiritual Assembly, it opens up, it's all hand painted, with all our love and prayers and support for the success of in the color they choose. And some of you have not had that chance. So I would like to leave it on maybe the Spanish teaching table. And if you go by, pick up your choice color and print your name within the letters so that when all your name is printed, hopefully no one's name will stand out. It be all of us as one, vision to victory. Because we want to tell to our National Spiritual Assembly, and all those whose name is here felt very, very, very honored to have such a wonderful National Spiritual Assemblies. I was in a meeting in California, and there was a presentation given by Judge Nelson, Dorothy Nelson. And before the meeting began, they gave introduction to her curriculum vitae. It took about almost an hour. And for the first time, I got a chance to know how wonderful it is that such a wonderful soldier of Baha'u'llah is giving up all to serve him with humility and with dedication. Now, as of the teaching activities in this area that we have been, there have been wonderful events. One of the highlights of it was formation of Dover Assembly. One of the objectives of the 6-year plan has been that all the state capitals who have not had assemblies form their assemblies. And Dover, which is the capital of Delaware, has never had a local spiritual assembly. For the first time last year, they formed their assemblies. And one of the members of the assembly was a newly declared Baha'i who learned about the faith through computer bulletin. The wonderful Baha'i began putting Baha'i questions on the computer bulletin, and he kept on asking questions. He read the entire peace statement, he read portions of Gleaning, writings of Baha'u'llah, and since Rezwan, since this newly declared Baha'i owns some of the bulletins, the local spiritual assembly of Dover has sponsored this bulletin, and they have received more than 2,000 inquiries about the Baha'i faith. In Trenton, by the aid of BTC of New Jersey, and also many friends who are really attracting the native people in Trenton. And I have no doubt, before the end of 6-year plan, we will have an assembly in Trenton. I have no doubt, from what I have seen, that once every 2 weeks, they gather people together, and it's such a wonderful spirit in Trenton. The other events which is happening, and there are many, and I may miss them. We have had wonderful series on covenant in New York City. We have had teaching wave in Long Island. We have had many upsurge of college activities in Pennsylvania, especially in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. In one of the colleges 2 years ago, two Baha'is were students there. Today we have 12 Baha'is. In last semester, they had 3 newly declared Baha'i. And it is wonderful because the first Baha'i taught a young girl who is right now doing a year of service in Thailand. She taught a girl from Buenos Aires, Argentina. The girl from Argentina has taught a girl from Chile. So it is a wonderful, wonderful spirit, and Baha'is are asked to do more and more things. I have a lovely letter that I received from a 6-year-old child as a teaching story of Justice has told us, teach on a scale, quality, intensity, variety outstrip all current efforts. And especially children's are such a wonderful instrument in teaching the cause. I read his letter to you. He said, my name is Nicholas Koba. I am 6-year-old. I went to Massanetta Baha'i conference this summer. That's a Virginia conference. They gave me a purple bracelet to wear. The next day I went to school and I wore my bracelet. One of my teachers saw my purple bracelet. He read the word and asked me if I was a Baha'i. I said yes. That day when my mom picked me up from school, he asked my mom if we were Baha'is, and she said yes. He talked with my mom a long time and asked a lot of questions. My mom invited him to a fireside. Mr. Bryan became a Baha'i the night he attended the second fireside. Now I have a Baha'i teacher.
I think what we... I think we're going to present this after it's been signed at the end of the conference to the National Assembly. All right? So please be sure to go and sign it. What we'd like to do now is to invite those individuals who have accepted the faith since Rizwan to please stand. Plan. Would you please stand? What we'd like to do is to call, friends, your attention to these new souls so that you can have a chance to interact with them and glean some of the spirit of a new believer. That will also help in inspiring you, because the next time we have a gathering like this, we don't want just a few of us here. We want there to be no room, no space with new believers. So friends, please, while we're putting these flowers on, I think we're going to have Virginia sing a song.
Jim Sturgis and Mark Kabari.
I can sing very well, and I can speak very well. But I love you well, I love you well, beloved. I can speak very well, and I can teach very well, but I love you well, I love you well, beloved. You say that all must give a message, my knees are shaking when I cry, because you promised to assist me. I dare to stand and say, I can sing very well, and I can play very well. I love you well, I love you well, beloved. And I can speak very well, and I can teach very well. I love you well, I love you well, beloved. You turn love into many hearts, a drop of light into a star, a drop of dew into a morning sun. We hold hands and there I can sing very well, and I can play very well, but I love you well, I love you well, beloved. I can speak very well, and I can teach very well.
Friends, there is nothing so special as to be in the presence of a new believer. Nothing so special. So friends, let's please be aware of the flowers. Let's greet these friends once more and derive some inspiration from them. Now, friends, because our time is very short, we need to adjourn ourselves to the teaching fair. And I hope that each one of you will take some time at this point and through the lunch hour to interact at the tables, get information, so that you can get that inspiration to begin thinking about what it means to experience large-scale enrollment. Allow.
Friends, just a few
We are only asking parents to take 1 hour at a time. This is one small hour to help teach the future champion builders of the world order. Don't forget that the lunch ticket is the yellow one. Lunch will be served at 12:30. They will collect the tickets at the door. And we also ask you to please be sure to continue wearing your identification badges. Those are your passes to get into the main session. If you don't wear them, you may have some trouble. Thank you. Enjoy yourself. See you at 2 o'clock back in this room. If I can see through the tears, I'd like to read this favorite passage of Baha'i. And in it he tells us who we are and what we have been given and how we can show our thanks and what the results will be. Bear with me, it's a little on the long side. O ye who are the chosen ones of the Abha kingdom, praise ye the Lord of hosts, for he, riding upon clouds, hath come down to this world out of the heaven of the invisible realm, so that east and west were lit by the glory of the Son of Truth. And the call of the kingdom was raised, and the heralds of the realm above, with melodies of the concourse on high, sang out the glad tidings of the coming. Then the whole world of being did quiver for joy. From amongst all mankind hath he chosen you, and your eyes have been opened to the light of guidance, and your ears attuned to the music of the company above, and blessed by abounding grace, your hearts and souls have been born into new life. Thank ye and praise ye God, that the hand of infinite bestowals hath set upon your heads this gem-studded crown, this crown whose lustrous jewels will forever flash and sparkle down all the reaches of time. To thank him for this, make ye a mighty effort, and choose for yourselves a noble goal. Through the power of faith, obey the teachings of God, and let all your actions conform to his laws. Thus may each one of you be even as a candle casting its light, the center of attraction wherever people come together, and from you, as from a bed of flowers, may sweet scents be shed. Raise ye a clamor like unto a roaring sea, like a prodigal cloud rain down the grace of heaven. Lift up your voices and sing out the songs of the Abha realm. Quench ye the fires of war, lift high the banners of peace, work for the oneness of humankind, and remember that religion is the channel of love unto all people. Be ye aware that the children of men are sheep of God, and he their loving shepherd, that he careth tenderly for all his sheep, and maketh them to feed in his own green pastures of grace, and giveth them to drink from the wellspring of life. Such is the way of the Lord. Such are his bestowals. Such from among his teachings is his precept of the oneness of mankind. The portals of his blessings are opened wide, and his signs are published abroad, and the glory of truth is blazing forth. Inexhaustible are the blessings. Know ye the value of this time. Strive ye with all your hearts. Raise up your voices and shout. until this dark world be filled with light, and this narrow place of shadows be widened out, and this dust heap of a fleeting moment be changed into a mirror for the eternal gardens of heaven, and this globe of earth receive its portion of celestial grace. Then will aggression crumble away, and all that maketh for disunity be destroyed, and the structure of oneness be raised, that the blessed tree may cast its shade over east and west, and the tabernacle of the singleness of man be set up on the high summits, and flags that betoken love and fellowship flutter from their staffs around the world, until the sea of truth lift high its waves, and earth bring forth the roses and sweet herbs of blessings without end, and become from pole to pole the Abha paradise. These are the counsels of Abdul-Baha. It is my hope that out of the bestowals of the Lord of hosts, ye will become the spiritual essence and the very radiance of mankind, binding the hearts of all with bonds of love. That through the power of the word of God, ye will bring to life the dead now buried in the graves of their sensual desires. That ye will, with the rays of the Sun of Truth, restore the sight of those whose inner eye is blind. That ye will bring spiritual healing to the spiritually sick. These things do I hope for out of the bounties and the bestowals of the beloved. At all times do I speak of you and call you to mind. I pray unto the Lord, and with tears I implore him to rain down all these blessings upon you, and gladden your hearts, and make blissful your souls, and grant you exceeding joy and heavenly delights.
My God, oh my God, verily these servants are turning to thee, supplicating thy kingdom of mercy. Verily they are attracted by thy holiness, and set aglow with the fire of thy love, seeking confirmation from thy wondrous kingdom, and hoping for attainment in thy heavenly realm. Verily they long for the descent of thy bestower, desiring illumination from the sun of reality. O Lord, make them radiant lamps, merciful signs, fruitful trees, and shining stars. May they come forth in thy service and be connected with thee by the bonds and ties of thy love, longing for the lights of thy favor. O Lord, make them signs of guidance, standards of thine immortal kingdom, waves of the sea of thy mercy, mirrors of the lights of thy majesty. Verily, thou art the generous. Verily, thou art the merciful. Verily, thou art the precious to the Lord.
Make firm our steps, O Lord, in thy path, and strengthen thou our hearts in thine obedience. Turn our faces toward the beauty of thy oneness, and gladden our bosoms with the signs of thy divine unity. Adorn our bodies with the robe of thy bounty, and remove from our eyes the veil of sinfulness, and give us the chalice of thy grace, that the essence of all beings may sing thy praise before the vision of thy grandeur. Revealed in thyself, O Lord, by thy merciful utterance, and the mystery of thy divine being, that the holy ecstasy of prayer may fill our souls, a prayer that shall rise above words and letters, and transcend a murmur of syllable and sounds, that all things may be plunged into nothingness with the revelation of thy splendor. Lord, these are servants that have remained fast and firm in thy covenant and thy testament, that have held fast unto the cord of constancy in thy cause, and clung unto the hem of the robe of thy grandeur. Assist them, O Lord, with thy grace, confirm with thy power, and strengthen their loins in obedience to thee. Thou art the pardoner, the gracious.
Glorified art thou, O Lord my God. Every man of insight confesseth thy sovereignty and thy dominion, and every discerning eye perceiveth the greatness of thy majesty and the compelling power of thy might. The winds of tests are powerless to hold back them that enjoy near access to thee from setting their faces toward the horizon of thy glory, and the tempests of trials must fail to draw away and hinder such as wholly devoted to thy will from approaching thy court. Methinks the lamp of thy love is burning in their hearts, and the light of thy tenderness is lit within their breasts. Adversities are incapable of estranging them from thy cause, and the vicissitudes of fortune can never cause them to stray from thy pleasure. I beseech thee, O my God, by them and by the sighs which their hearts utter in their separation from thee, to keep them safe from the mischief of thine adversaries, and to nourish their souls with what thou hast ordained for thy loved ones, on whom shall come no fear, and who shall not be put to grief. Allah.
Oh God, refresh and gladden my spirit, purify my heart, illumine my power. I lay all my affairs in thy hands. Thou art my guide and my refuge. I will no longer be sorrowful and grieved. I will be a happy and joyful. Oh God, I will no longer be full of anxiety, nor will I let trouble harass me. I will not dwell on the unpleasant things of life. Oh God, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself. I dedicate myself to thee, O Lord.
Thank you. Welcome back. I know what Helene meant now when she said, looking out over the sea of faces, everybody looks like they have a little glow on. Even though it's after lunch, they usually say you get sleepy after lunch. I don't think we're going to get sleepy at all. I have some announcements. So if you'll just listen to the announcements. The first one is the parents should be aware that tonight you should prepare your children for a feast. They're going to have a real live feast. They're going to learn what a feast is all about. So the children tonight will be having a feast. Those of you who want to sign up and pay for dinner, you can do so at the front desk, and you have to do it before 4:30. Now the dinner ticket is gray, and as we said before, if you've lost your ticket, too bad. You have to buy another one. So remember, your dinner ticket is gray. There are no exceptions. I don't care what story you come and tell, you have to pay again if you've lost your ticket. Now also, if there are people here who want to stay overnight and you found out that there's no room here, no room in the inn, you can go across to the Ramada, and there is a shuttle bus that's available. Ask about the shuttle at the front desk, because we do not want Baha'is running across the thruway trying to get over to the Ramada Inn. It's a good way to get to the Abha Kingdom in a hurry. Now parents, be sure that right after this session, you pick up your children on the mezzanine. On the mezzanine. I'd like you to know that at this session, you will have a chance to prepare some questions and ask them of the speakers. But we won't be accepting questions from people who raise their hands. You found some cards on your seats or on seats near to you. If you think of a question that you would like to pose to the speaker, after the speaker is finished, we will be collecting, the ushers will be collecting these cards, and they will bring them up to the front. And the speakers will have a chance to look over the cards and answer some of the questions. You understand that? If the people coming in could try to be very quiet so we can get these announcements across. Thank you. I think we have another announcement here. Here are the names of the teachers for the children's classes. Age 4 to 5 will be in Forest Gate. That's the room. Age 4 to 5 will be in Forest Gate. Okay, and here are the names. Ashib Luciani, Dr. Adrian Fraser, Evelyn Grammer, Ron Fraser, Fauze Ray. Okay. The time slots for this afternoon, 2 to 3 for age 4 to 5, Dr. Adrian Fraser, 3 to 4, Evelyn Grammer, 4 to 5, Ron Fraser, and 8 to 9 this evening will be Fauze Ray. These people know now what their time schedule is. Age 6 to 8, from 2 to 3, Susan Mojaveri, 3 to 4. We don't have anybody from 3 to 4 for age 6 to 8. We would love to have a volunteer. Age 6 to 8 again, from 4 to 5. Baha'i, I'm sorry I can't read this last name, Williams. And 8 to 9 tonight, Susan Gold. Now, we also have one announcement from Tahir Adie. Tahir Adie. You want to make a little announcement?
A wonderful, joyous announcement. What could be better than we have a brand new Baha'i? she studied the Baha'i faith, but she felt this is too good to be true. Now she said few months before meeting a Baha'i who is the caretaker of the Baha'i Center, David, she told to herself, I have to investigate that Baha'i faith again. And shortly after, Baha'u'llah led her to a Baha'i. And she said, I cannot wait till the fast time so I can fast. Here is Laura.
Introduce this next speaker, and I really wasn't certain how to go about it. So I called up the National Center and I got this about 2-line bio of Robert Henderson, because that's all he'll let us say. So I'm going to read this part. It says, Robert Henderson is Secretary General of the National Spiritual Assembly and its Chief Executive Officer. And it says, Dr. Henderson's former positions include Managing Director of Tarkenton & Company, a management consulting firm, and an Executive Officer of Air Atlanta. He received an doctorate in education from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. That's it. Well, now, I've been talking to a few people over lunch, and they've told me a few other things about Dr. They tell me he was a rebel in college. They tell me that when he was at the University of Amherst, that he was upset, and probably some other students were upset, because they thought that the black students were being discriminated against, particularly when they all got a D in psychology. So what he did was he organized a sit-in. And there were 110 black students on the campus and 25,000 other colors, mostly white. And as a result of this sit-in, I understand they made some substantial changes on the campus in the treatment of the blacks. And so this was one, chalk up one for Robert Henderson. This started, but apparently he's been involved with Doug Rue and Bill Smith in forming a school for the disadvantaged called SASSY Academy, and it stands for the Springfield Street Academy Incorporated, and it's a school for disadvantaged, and I understand that some of these students are now entering college, so this is something else he's done. But I worked at the National Center for a few years, and Dr. Henderson was the secretary. He's been the secretary for about 4.5 years. And I don't know whether any of us can really appreciate what that job entails. He's called now the Secretary General. He was called the Executive Secretary, I believe. And from what I could see and sense, it is a horrendous job. Because here is a man who's right out in front of the troops. He's not one calling the shots behind the lines. He's right out in front, cajoling, twisting our arms, looking at the fun, practically crying, Now, think of us 4.5 years ago, and think of how it is we had to be brought forth and encouraged to do the kind of things that it looks like we might be starting out to do today. So here is someone who needs to know from all of us, because what are we trying to do here? This is the American Baha'i community. You know what that means? We have a big job to do here, because this is the United States of America. And you know what that means? What did the Baha'i writings tell us? So here we have someone who's trying to marshal all the efforts to bring the Baha'is in from these efforts to bring this country into the forefront of peace, universal justice, one world. So I think that the best way we can introduce Robert Henderson today is to let him know that no longer does he have to twist our arms. We are here, we are ready, we will sacrifice, we will give up, we will be behind him, if not in front of him, from now on. Okay, Robert Henderson.
So whenever we talk about our respective identities, the important thing that we know, that we remember, that we recall, is that we know the Lord of the age, and we are united in that knowledge. We're united in our action to carry out His instruction for the spiritual revitalization of the planet. I think that is what is important about each one of us. I appreciate your welcome, and I must at the outset just note that when Virginia sang "God is One" this morning, it took me back about 35 years to the time when I was a young Baha'i boy at the Baha'i Center on New Hampshire Avenue in Los Angeles. Now, any of you who were Baha'is at that time remember all of the tunes we sang. God is one, man is one, and all the religions agree. You remember that? We sang it this morning. Consultation means finding out what everybody is talking about. You remember that? What about Johnny is a Christian, Jacob is a Jew? You remember that? These were the hits of the Baha'i children at that time. And it warmed my heart that it was sung this morning, and with such vigor. You know, the old songs haven't lost their punch. I also wanted to note, we have a very special guest among us today. And at the outset, I think it's important that we recognize her and greet her appropriately. Because we recall that the guardian Chogi Effendi instructed us that our faith grows through the alternation of crisis and victory. He called it the dialectic of crisis and victory. And he told us that when catastrophic events occur, which seem to paralyze the community for a short time, which seem to arrest its forward progress, which seem to impair its unity, that we cannot ourselves be paralyzed long by these catastrophic events. We must view them in what the Guardian described as the proper perspective, as blessings in disguise. And he delineated their benefits. He said that these catastrophic events, which occur from time to time in the Baha'i community, are the means of a fresh outpouring of celestial strength from God Himself. He said that they are an agency for the revitalization and purification of the life of the Baha'i community. He said that they are a protection from some imminent and still greater danger. And he said that often, at the height of the crisis, more often than the crisis has passed, the wisdom of these catastrophic events is evident to both friend and foe. Such an event occurred in 1978, when the Islamic Revolution began in Iran. And we know what happened. The Islamic fundamentalists seized control and established the Islamic Republic. And their zeal to establish Islam as the government and the religion included a blood commitment to the destruction of the Iranian Baha'i community. 200 Baha'is were martyred in their efforts to destroy all of the Baha'is, to destroy the faith itself in Iran. The administrative order was dismantled by government decree. The holy places were destroyed. The funds were confiscated. Baha'is were denied their pensions, thrown off their jobs. Baha'i children were taken away from their families and given to Muslim parents to raise as good Muslims. All of the forms of genocide recognized by the Genocide Convention recently passed by the United States were being perpetrated against the Iranian Baha'i community. It is interesting to note that 200 people die in the blink of an eye. Just a couple of weeks ago, a plane crashed and 252 people died. We cannot remember which plane it was or where it crashed. A few weeks ago, there was a major earthquake in Eastern Europe. Thousands of people died. But we can't remember which country in which those people died. A year ago, in Mexico, 5,000 people perished in an earthquake that almost leveled Mexico City. And we can't call their names. We don't remember when it occurred. But 200 Baha'is gave their lives. 200 Baha'is gave their lives in Iran, and it was the agency for the emergence of the faith of Baha'u'llah from obscurity. It was the cause of the revitalization and the purification of his worldwide community. It was the means for a galvanization of the Baha'i community such as we have never seen. And we have among us today a woman who is the only surviving member of the 3 national spiritual assemblies who were arrested, taken away, led to their death. And we must pay our deep respect to this champion of Baha'u'llah. E.T. Baha'i, would you please rise?
I'm not really in the mood to talk in this moment. Thank you. Thank you very much.
we have a good deal to think about. This alternation of crisis and victory has been the way the Baha'i faith has grown since its inception. It has always been the shedding of the sacred blood of the martyrs in Iran, which has been the heartbeat, the pulse, which has caused the rapid expansion of the Baha'i faith. First, the 20,000 that died at the inception of the faith, and since then, a steady stream of people who are willing to give their lives. And when we recall the Iranian Baha'is who have given their lives in this most recent series of attacks, let us remember who they are. They were the cream of the Baha'i crop. They were the fairest and the brightest and the most dedicated of those who had given their lives, committed their souls to Baha'u'llah. They were the ones who were the physicists and the doctors and the lawyers. They had young families and young children. They had years of service ahead of them and years of distinguished service behind them. And yet, when it came time to give their lives, when they were challenged by the mullahs to recant or to die, they didn't barter because of their young families. They didn't hesitate for fear of who would care for their children. They didn't have a second thought about what would happen to the affairs of the faith. They knew that their obligation was to give their lives, and they died. None of them recanted. And it was through their sacrifice that we have come to understand something about the standard of Baha'i life that we are called to achieve. That we have come to understand something about what is required of us to achieve that standard of living sacrifice Shoghi Effendi asked us to achieve. When that event occurred, we sought refuge in the writings of Shoghi Effendi so that we would understand why it was necessary for this bloodshed that has been so persistent in the life of the faith. And we found the letter written by Shoghi Effendi to the Baha'is of Iran, dated Rizwan 89 BE, or about 1932. And he explained to us that it was the shedding of the sacred blood of the martyrs in Persia, which had been the agency for the upliftment of the faith in all parts of the world. It was the shedding of their blood that raised the Mashul Askar in Wilmette. It was the shedding of their blood that established the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States. It was the shedding of their blood that caused us to remain spiritually steadfast at a time of violent tests by covenant breakers. It was the shedding of their blood, the House of Justice tells us in the Rizwan message, that will cause all of the world. Let me read it. It is the shedding of the sacred blood of the martyrs in Persia, which in this shining era, this resplendent, this gem-studded Baha'i age, shall change the face of the earth into high heaven, as revealed in the tablets, raise up the tabernacle of the oneness of mankind in the very heart of the world, reveal to men's eyes the reality of the unity of the human race, establish the most great peace, make of this lower realm a mirror for the Abha paradise, and establish beyond any doubt before all of the peoples of the world the truth of the verse, the day when the earth shall be changed into another earth. This is the reality of their sacrifice. And we must bear in mind, at this time when the House of Justice has asked us to do so much to rededicate ourselves, to live for Baha'u'llah, to achieve an unprecedented level of living sacrifice in every day and in every way, that the acts we do, the thoughts we think, the sacrifices we make are not limited to their material significance. They have a material effect, but they have a much more significant spiritual effect. Just as the shedding of the blood of 200 martyrs in Persia has revolutionized the status and the capacity of the faith worldwide. let us look just for a moment at this alternation of crisis and victory. Here we were, having initiated the seat of the Universal House of Justice in Haifa. With the Iranian Baha'i community, the principal means of financial support for the Universal House of Justice. They had always contributed most substantially to the undertakings of the World Center. They had always contributed most generously to the pioneer calls of the Guardian and then of the Universal House of Justice. And suddenly they were cut off and unable to make their contributions. And it was at that time that the entire Baha'i world arose in their defense. We were galvanized with a single purpose. Baha'is who never even considered that they individually had the capacity to go to their governments and to begin to talk to their governments about protecting the Iranian Baha'is arose and forged working relations with the major governments throughout the world and caused those governments to arise in the defense of the Iranian Baha'is. We saw that the seat of the Universal House of Justice was completed despite the incapacity of the Iranian Baha'is to continue their contributions. We saw that the temple in Samoa was dedicated and the temple in India was dedicated. We saw an increase in the number of national spiritual assemblies. We saw outbreaks of entry by troops in the different parts of the world. We saw a new capacity infused in the very heart of Baha'is everywhere on the globe. It caused a new level of independence and self-reliance, a new level of maturity among the national spiritual assemblies. I'm reminded, and it's a story I love to tell, of Edwin Derwinski, who was a congressman in Wilmette, Illinois, before he was asked to go and serve as one of the assistant secretaries of the State Department. And Derwinski went to a small country in Africa called Burkina. When he went to Burkina, having been one of the early defenders of the persecuted Iranian Baha'is, he was met in the lobby of the hotel in which he stayed by the general manager, who told him that the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Burkina wished to welcome him. And he received them in his suite. The National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Burkina, made up of native Burkinans, presented to him a copper plaque as an expression of their heartfelt appreciation for his efforts in defense of the Iranian Baha'is. I've been to his office. I have seen that plaque mounted. It is the centerpiece of a wall littered with tributes and plaques and trophies as a result of his distinguished service over decades. But at the centerpiece of this wall of honor, this wall of respect, is his most treasured token, and that is the expression of love and appreciation of the National Assembly of the Baha'is of Burkina for his defense of the Iranian Baha'is. You see, this is the kind of effect that the sacrifices of the Iranian Baha'is have had on the enrichment of our capacity to move the faith forward. We saw in that same series of events the presentation of the promise of world peace, the statement of the Universal House of Justice to all of the peoples and the leaders of the world. And to our great surprise, we, the members of the National Spiritual Assemblies around the world, received the instruction to present this statement on peace to our respective heads of state. Now, in some countries, we didn't even know who our heads of state were. In some countries, they change so often that it's difficult to keep track of who's in charge this week. And yet the Baha'is, in some cases, having their National Spiritual Assembly meetings around the kitchen table of a small house, or maybe even less than a small house, arose and went forward and presented in 186 cases the statement on peace of the Universal House of Justice, the supreme institution, not just of the Baha'i world, but of the world, to 186 of the world's leaders. In one country, I'm told that the National Spiritual Assembly presented the promise of world peace, only to have the ruler who had received it fall victim to a coup d'etat and be overthrown. And so they wired the Universal House of Justice and asked for a second, very special edition of the Universal Framework for Peace. The House of Justice sent it, and they made a second presentation to the new dictator of that country. And about 2 months later, he was overthrown. The third man who assumed power demanded an audience with the National Spiritual Assembly of that country so that he could be presented. Now you know something else is going on. That is not a normal course of events. But we have to understand that what we do for Baha'u'llah, we are his agents. It is not our business to transform souls. It is his business. But we have a role in the process. And our role is to arise and to struggle with the implementation of his instructions for the way we live our lives, for the way we conduct his affairs. And when we do, we see these incredible miracles. We see these tremendous developments. Even under the most catastrophic circumstances, we find that these catastrophes, these crises in the development of the faith become the agencies of the greatest victories of the faith. In 1982, shortly after the persecution of the Iranian Baha'is was in full scale, and the Iranians were feeling their stuff, they were feeling audacious and arrogant. I went to Nigeria with Counselor Ellis and with Counselor Robbins to participate in the 8th Annual International Conference being held in Lagos, Nigeria. This conference had been planned for months by the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Nigeria. And it was such a tremendous undertaking for this National Assembly still in its early adolescence. Every day when they would come in to plan the conference, they would recite the Tablet of Ahmad 9 times. They would come from different places in Nigeria, and they would have time to recite the Tablet of Ahmad 7 times in the car. And then when they all gathered at the National Hazrat al-Quds, they would recite the tablet an additional 2 times. They had made arrangements for us to stay at the University of Nigeria in Lagos. They had reserved hotels, they had reserved the dormitories of the university to accommodate approximately 2,000 people from 46 different nations and from 37 different African tribes. No sooner did we arrive in Lagos than the Iranian ambassador to Nigeria succeeded in sabotaging all of the arrangements for the conference. All of the arrangements for the conference. And we found ourselves without a place to go, without a place to have the conference, with no place to stay, with no place to eat. And this was 3 days before the conference was to take place. People had arrived on foot. People had arrived on bush buses. Some people had come, a fortunate few, by airplane. There were people from as far away as Alaska, the United States, Japan, all corners of the earth, and there was no place to go, there was nothing to eat, there was no place to lay your head. And this became the agency for a tremendous victory for the faith. Within 3 days, the conference was reconstructed. And instead of having it at the University of Lagos, it was held at the National Theater of Nigeria, which was reserved exclusively for President Shagari, the President of Nigeria, to make his official announcements of state. Other than that, it sat empty. It had only been used for the President of the country. That was the site of our conference. And instead of residing in the dormitories of the University of Lagos, we resided in Terry House, which was a huge open warehouse owned by one of the Baha'is who was a pioneer from Holland, who operated the second largest import-export company in Nigeria. And when our arrangements were scuttled, she went out and bought 1,500 mattresses. and we all slept in that open area. We were together. We were Baha'is in the love of Baha'u'llah, and we had a triumphant conference. During that time, we visited every major and minor elected and appointed official in Lagos. We told the story of Baha'u'llah. Not only was the Iranian ambassador frustrated in his efforts to sabotage the conference, but because we conducted the conference at the National Theater of Lagos, we were on television every single night. There was such a favorable public response to those broadcasts of the proceedings of the conference that at the end of the week, the major network in Lagos invited us to give a 1/2-hour fireside prime time on television. Every day that the conference proceeded, there were generous descriptions of the proceedings and descriptions of the conference participants in the newspapers of Lagos. And when the conference was adjourned, we went out and opened Baha'i communities throughout Nigeria. Now let me tell you what kind of effect the shedding of the sacred blood of the martyrs had on the spiritual enrichment of the Baha'is throughout the world. At that time, the Nigerian Baha'i community was being calmed by Malaysian Baha'is who had gone out because the Malaysians had won all of the goals of their plan. They had adopted new goals and they had won all of those goals. And they had adopted new goals again and they had won all of those goals. So they decided to disperse. And they sent their young people to all corners of the world to help the countries, the Baha'i countries of the world, win the goals of a 7-year plan. They sent their doctors. They sent their law students. They sent their dental students. And they would go from village to village, and they would teach the faith. They would stay with the people of the village for 2 and 3 weeks to begin a rhythm of Baha'i life. They would teach the children songs. They would teach the adults and the children prayers. And they would begin to organize and conduct the meetings of local spiritual assemblies. And so when I went to the village of Itoria, a Yoruban village about 100 kilometers north of Lagos, I was greeted at the gate of the village by little children who sang the noonday prayer so that they could show that they had been saying it every day. And as I walked through the village, Yoruban villagers who lived essentially as they did 200 years ago or 500 years ago, with the only sign of modernity being Coca-Cola bottles. They would greet us with Allahu Akbar. And when I sat on the porch to teach a Ghanaian refugee who had taken refuge in that village the faith, I began to talk a little bit about the faith. And I said, you know, when God created the world, he had a plan. And his plan was to gather all of the members of his family together and to establish spiritual harmony so that all of his children would live as one. And the man really looked at me with frustration and disdain. And I thought I had said something terribly bad, or he had some religious tradition I was unaware of, and he was categorically rejecting what I was saying. He turned to me with a sense of urgency and frustration, and he said, I know that. He said, now tell me the laws of your prophet. And after I told him the laws of the prophet Baha'u'llah, of the manifestation Baha'u'llah, he wanted to know when we were going to build a center for the proper administration of Baha'i community in that village. Now you see, a spiritual energy was released. And it was the energy released by the sacrifices of the Iranian believers. And this crisis manifested itself in victories that were apparent to all of us. The construction of the seat of the House of Justice, the completion of the temples, the Mashal Askars in the Indian subcontinent and in Samoa, the raising up of national spiritual assemblies, the presentation of the promise of world peace to 186 leaders throughout the world. But it also had an effect on our spiritual capacity to do the work of the faith. The release of the Malaysians, who scattered throughout the world and who raised up Baha'i communities, and the increased receptivity of the peoples of the world themselves to the presentation of the world, of the promise of world peace, and to the word of Baha'u'llah. This example in Lagos is just a snapshot of what is now available to us in the receptivity of the peoples of the world to the call of Baha'u'llah. And we have to overcome our own crises in order to seize the opportunity that these sacrifices have put before us. Our crisis is characteristically different than the crisis of the Iranian Baha'is. The Iranian Baha'is gave their lives. We have the same challenge, but not to give our lives physically, to give up our lives spiritually, to become standards of living sacrifice, to become champions of Baha'u'llah. Our crisis is a crisis of faith. Our crisis is a crisis of paralysis of will. You all recall that in the promise of world peace, the Universal House of Justice challenges the world to overcome its paralysis by an act of will and establish peace in the world. We might do well to challenge ourselves to overcome our paralysis by an act of will and establish Baha'i communities that are vibrant, that are characterized by large-scale growth, that are filled with people who are spiritually transformed, people who are lovers of humanity, communities which are bastions of harmony and unity and fellowship, of help and mutual assistance. Our crisis is to live the life and to dedicate our lives to the service of Allah and to the teaching of His Word. This morning, Jim Nelson, with great passion and profound insight, reminded us that Baha'u'llah has given us a new name, a new spiritual identity to carry out the assignment He's given us. It is true. I can't be the Secretary of the National Spiritual Assembly as Robert Henderson. I freely confess my incompetence, my inadequacy. I pale at the responsibility of living the Baha'i life. But Baha'u'llah has given me a new spiritual identity, and He has infused me with a capacity that is far beyond my native abilities. He has said that we are springtimes of tender mercy. He said that we are showers of bounty. He said that we are the solace of the eye of creation. He's made us the agents of the diffusion of His Spirit, which can transform all things and conquer all hearts. And we have to arise and carry that Spirit out. In Haifa, at the International Convention, we were besieged by the members of 132 participating national spiritual assemblies who came to the members of the National Assembly of the United States and challenged us and asked us, when will America arise? When will you lead us spiritually, as it says in the writings? We saw in them the victory of Baha'u'llah. There were two significant developments that I'll describe briefly for you. The first was the participation of indigenous people among those national spiritual assemblies. These were not national spiritual assemblies made up of pioneers, American and Persian pioneers who had scattered to the four corners of the world to establish Baha'i communities. This was the ultimate triumph of the Baha'i faith. The indigenous peoples of the world comprised those national assemblies. This may be the first time in human history that any group, religion, or army has set out to conquer the world, succeeded in its conquest, and then empowered the conquered to lead themselves. And here they were, from Papua New Guinea, from Africa, from Korea, from the mountains in Central America, wearing their native dress. There was the man from Papua New Guinea whom we will never forget, with the tall feathers, a crown of feathers on his head, his face painted black and white and yellow, his nose red, his lips white and encircled, his beard encrusted with a white paint. Around his waist was a loincloth woven with branches, and he had sandals that were woven from some kind of strong vine. Across his shoulder was a thin leather string attached to a pouch which rests at his waist. And in the pouch was his ballot for the 9 members of the Universal House of Justice. This is the triumph of Baha'i. We saw Africans in silk suits and in lions' skins. We saw people from the Andes Mountains with those hats that come down and cover the ears and have the strings that hang down to their shoulders, and those beautiful woven blankets that are so common to the people of that region. This is the triumph of Baha'i. Who made this triumph? It was the pioneers who were willing to live for Baha'i, to sacrifice their lives. Did they think that they were capable? Did they think that they knew enough, or their skills were sufficient to bring about this kind of change? Their strength came from Baha'i. Their strength was the result of their confidence and their faith. And that's what allowed them to endure. When I listen to the stories of the old-timers, of the ones who have been in the battle for decades and decades, they would talk about their trips to different parts of the world and their work to establish local spiritual assemblies and then national spiritual assemblies. And they said that they would write Shoghi Effendi and say, Shoghi Effendi, at Rizwan